Hello everyone, thank you for joining this presentation even though it's not a live session. My name is Emil Rakadjiev, I'm software architect and product manager at Esprow. Today I will be talking about practical aspects of the Orchestra standard. Let's see what our agenda is. First we will cover some basics about the Orchestra standard and see what benefits it offers. We will also go through some tools that the fixed trading community offers to its members to work with Orchestra. And we will focus on the newest and most comprehensive tool offering called Orchestra Server. I will show you a short demo and then list a few examples of use cases that companies might want to use the Orchestra Server for. And finally, I will show you how you can get access to the Orchestra Server in case you are interested to use it. So what is Orchestra? Orchestra is a standard developed by the fixed trading community to create machine-readable API specifications. Basically, you can create files in a standard format that describe your systems, more specifically your system interfaces. You might be familiar with existing API specification formats such as Fixed Unified Repository XML, Quick Fix XML, or some vendor-specific proprietary formats. Now, Orchestra offers benefits beyond those existing formats. It lets you describe more facets of your systems than those old formats allow you to do. We will see some examples in a second of such additional functionality that Orchestra opens. One thing that's worth mentioning is that Orchestra lets you describe not only your fixed, but also your non-fixed, your binary APIs. So what specific benefits does Orchestra offer? First, something important is that it's machine readable. Unfortunately, nowadays, still many companies distribute their API specifications only in PDF format. The problem with PDF is that a person has to read through it, potentially a few hundred pages. They have to understand it in some way and then create a machine readable representation, basically source code out of it. This, of course, is error prone and takes a lot of time. If you had a standard machine readable description of your API instead, then this would remove the ambiguity, and it would be very quick to just load it into your system that can interpret that machine-readable specification already. Now, if we focus on Orchestra-specific benefits, especially compared to older specification formats, then here you can see a few examples of those. Firstly, existing formats usually allow you to describe only one structure for each of your messages. This can be a problem in many cases. If we take as an example the execution report, then we know that an execution report is not one execution report, but it can be an acknowledgement, it can be a reject, it can be a partial fill, full fill, and so on. And each of those can be different depending on what asset class you use them for. Now in Orchestra, you can describe all those different variants for each of your messages and other elements using scenarios. Orchestra also allows you to describe dynamic aspects of your API, not only static aspects. By static, I mean messages and their structure. But in Orchestra, you can describe also how those messages are used, who sends them to where, what values the text should have, and in what sequence they follow. Those are called workflows in Orchestra. And Orchestra also includes a powerful expression language called Score DSL that is used to describe the values of the tags, for example, in workflows, but also it lets you describe conditional requirements for elements with the same expression language. Two other parts of Orchestra which are interesting are the interfaces and the mappings. The interfaces let you describe your service offerings. Essentially, what this means is that it lets you describe in a standard way to your counterparties where and how they should connect to. If we take the trivial examples, then this is the IP, the port, and the comp IDs. But the interfaces standard, of course, allows you to describe much more around your service offerings and then distribute it to your counterparties. And the mappings are something that is work in progress. As their name says, they let you define in a standard way mappings between tags. For example, many venue providers, they have client-specific tags, and those have to be mapped to some internal tags. This is usually quite difficult to keep track of, and it can become a mess. The mapping standard lets you define those mappings in a standard way and keep them, maintain them very easily. So if you have an Orchestra file that describes all those different facets of your system, then what benefit do you gain out of that? Well, it allows you to automate a lot of the processes around your APIs. It allows you to generate automatically certification tests to onboard your counterparties. It allows you to generate tests which will make sure that your system works as it is described in the specification, that is, it works correctly. It allows you also to automate parts or maybe all of your fixed engine provisioning. It lets you generate automatically the documentation for your system, as we will see later on during the Orchestra Server demo. And it can open even more automation possibilities. And this, of course, means that you can roll out your new system versions much quicker, and you can get your counterparties to connect to your systems much quicker, which means that they can trade quicker, which, of course, has an effect on your bottom line. As we see, Orchestra is a very feature-rich and powerful format, which lets you describe a lot of the facets of your systems. But, of course, to work with such complex files, you need tools. And the good news is that the fixed trading community offers complementary tools to its members to work with Orchestra. You can see examples of those tools here on the slide. Log to Orchestra lets you load your fixed log files and then generate an Orchestra file out of them. Playlist allows you to load an existing Orchestra file, filter out the elements which are relevant to you, and then generate a filtered Orchestra file out of that. Tablature is a markdown format which lets you describe your system, and then it can also generate an Orchestra file out of that for you. And the newest and most comprehensive tool offering by the fixed trading community to its members is the Orchestra server, which covers most of the functionality of the other tools and offers also functionality beyond that. So we will focus on Orchestra server as part of this presentation. So what is Orchestra server? Orchestra server is a web application to create, manage, and publish your fixed and non-fixed API specifications. It's an application that is based on Esprow's ETP box technology. It offers many features. Here, some of them are listed. For example, it allows you a very quick access to the world of Orchestra. You can just load your existing API specifications into the system. For example, if you have them in quick fix XML format, with a few clicks, you can have them in the system. And then with another few clicks, you can already generate an Orchestra XML out of them. You can also easily edit and browse your specifications. The machine-readable part, which we call dictionary, can be managed using a user-friendly visual editor. The human-readable part, which we call document, can be created using the Markdown format. And of course, you can version your API specifications. You can export them into machine-readable formats such as Orchestra XML or human-readable formats such as PDF. And Orchestra server already comes with the standard fixed specifications preloaded, and they are also updated regularly when new versions are released. We will see during the demo practical examples of those features. Before we jump into the demo, though, I would like to show a diagram just to visualize what exactly we mean by an API specification in the context of Orchestra server. An API specification has an API dictionary, which describes the machine-readable part of your API. This is maintained in Orchestra format. And a specification can have one or more human-readable documents, as we call them, which explain in a human-readable way the aspects of your API. Now, those documents, they usually contain also parts of the machine-readable part of the dictionary. Those are the message tables, which are included in the PDFs usually. And those message tables are the ones that are the most difficult to maintain manually and the most error-prone, and that require the most time. Fortunately, Orchestra server allows you to maintain them automatically. It lets you just pick the element for which you would like to have a table, and it automatically creates the table for you. And when you modify your dictionary, the table is automatically updated according to the latest modifications. And on the right side, you can see export formats. So the documents, the human-readable parts can be exported as PDF, for example, and the machine-readable part, the dictionary, can be exported into formats such as Orchestra XML. Okay, let's take a look at the system in action now. So here you can see the login screen of Orchestra server. Let me log in. And we can see that the standard fixed specification is already preloaded in the system. Now, let's create a new specification. I will enter the basic details, and I have already an Orchestra file prepared that we can load. But you can also, of course, load existing quick fix XML files, fixed unified repository XML, or you can clone also existing specifications to create new ones out of them. Okay, so the file is uploaded. We can import it as a new specification. And now the Orchestra file is imported into the system. We will see it show up as the specification here in Orchestra server. Here it is. Let's open it. And if you have worked with existing API specification formats, then you will recognize some elements here on the left. We have the messages, components, groups, fields, and other element types. So here we have selected the advertisement message, and on the right side we can see its structure. For elements which have content, we can see the content as well. So for example, here we can see the tags inside the standard header. For tags which have enumerated values, which are called code sets in Orchestra, we can also see the code sets. We can see details about the elements. And we can not only look at the structure, but we can also edit the messages easily. So for example, we can reorder tags if we want to. We can add additional elements into the message. We can delete elements, we can edit elements, and so on. Okay, let's create a custom tag now in our API specification. I select Add Field. I enter the tag number. The name, let's call it custom tag. And the type will be string. You can, of course, define additional field properties. You can define documentation and so on. But for now, let's just focus on the basic information. And those 3 properties are enough. Click Add, and our custom tag is already in the system. You can see it here. Now, let's add it to a message. Let's select the new order single message. So here we can see the structure of the new order single message, and we can just add our new custom tag to the structure. I select Add Element, and I type custom tag. Here it is. This is the tag that we just created, and I add it to the message. By default, the tags are added at the end of the message, but as we saw earlier, you can easily reorder them, which we can do now. So here is our custom tag. Well, let's put it here, for example. And we have already included it in the message. Now, one thing that Orchestra offers that other older specification formats don't offer are the scenarios, as we covered them in the beginning. So I can show you an example of how easy it is to create scenarios in Orchestra Server. Let's take the instrument component as an example. The instrument component can have different variants depending, let's say, on the asset class. You can have one for equities, which will use, let's say, the symbol to identify the security. You can have one for FX, which will use security ID, and so on. So to create a scenario out of the base scenario, you can just click on Duplicate Component. You can enter the name of the new scenario. In this case, we will use it for equities. We click OK, and that's it. And the system generates a new scenario for you. And now we said that equities will use symbols, so this means that we don't need the security ID. We can just delete it. And now we have our custom equities scenario for the instrument component. And similarly, we can create the others, FX and so on. Good, so if we are ready with the new version of our API specification, we can export it into Orchestra XML. The export has started and the system will notify us when it's ready. Actually, it's already ready. But before we look at that, let's move on to the human readable part, which is the so-called document. So if we switch to the document, then you will see that at the moment it's empty because we just created the specification, but I have prepared a markdown that I can insert here. So here you can see in this section, we have the editor. On the right, we have the live preview to see how the contents in the editor will look like. And on the left, we have the structure of the document which we are editing. You are probably familiar with Markdown. It's a very easy to use format to create textual documents. And we support all the standard Markdown features, headings, bullets, links, and so on. I don't want to go into the details of all of those. I just want to focus on some features which are available only in Orchestra Server. If we go to the images section, we can see that we can insert images using a URL, which is a standard functionality in Markdown. But what we let you do in Orchestra Server is that you can upload your images directly into the system, and they will be stored and versioned together with your API specification. So here, for example, I just uploaded an image from my PC, and now it is stored and versioned together with the specification. Another interesting feature is PlentyUML, which is language to create diagrams. Of course, you can insert diagrams as images as well, but we also support PlentyUML, which allows you to describe in a relatively simple textual format diagrams. You can see that with those 2 lines, you can create such a diagram. The advantage of this is that if you create a new version of your API specification and you want to compare it with an older version to see what has changed, when you have a PlentyUML diagram source, you can easily see what has changed. In images, it is a bit more difficult. And the most important functionality that Orchestra Server's document editor offers are the dictionary references. I mentioned those a bit earlier. The dictionary references are basically references which point to some message or other element from the dictionary, and the system automatically generates a table for you with the structure and details of that element. Let's see how it looks in practice. So you can click on the Insert API Dictionary Element button, and you just need to select the element which you would like to insert. Let's insert the new order single. You can choose what information you would like to insert about this element. We will skip now documentation and pedigree. Let's just insert the message structure table. If you want, you can also customize the table's columns. You can enter custom names. You can choose what content should be in the table. So you have basically full flexibility to configure the table, and not just the content, but also the layout. You can define the widths of the columns. And for elements which have content, you can also define whether they should be expanded or not. But now, for the sake of time, let's just use the default table layout. So I just clicked OK, and you can see that immediately the system generated this reference for us. And here on the right, you can see that the table has already been rendered as well. And this is our new order single message. We should be able to find also the custom tag that we inserted into the specification just now. Here it is. And if we remove this custom tag, or if we edit some new tag in the dictionary editor, the system would automatically update this table right away, so you don't need to do anything to keep it up to date. And besides inserting tables for single elements, you can also insert tables, for example, with the list of all messages. For this, you just need to select the messages group, select table of messages. Also here you can customize the content, and just click add, and here is our table with the list of all messages in our API. Okay, if we are ready with the document, we can just save it and then export it as PDF. It takes a few seconds to export. So here we can see that our Orchestra XML file has been exported. We could download it, and the PDF is ready as well. So let's just see how it looks. This is the default PDF template that we have in the system, the cover page, table of contents, and then we have the actual content of the document. Let's scroll down. Here we have the image that we inserted, the plenty.uml diagram, and we have our message tables. Okay, so Orchestra server, as you can see, offers many features. What are some examples of use cases that companies might want to use Orchestra server for? Well, a trivial use case, and most straightforward one, is to adopt Orchestra, to get started with Orchestra, and also to provide your API specification in machine-readable Orchestra format to your counterparties. Orchestra server allows you a very easy way to do that. As we saw, Orchestra server also provides a very efficient way to manage your API and to document your API. With this, you can create it much quicker and with less errors. We have also come across some use cases where some companies want to manage their API in Orchestra format. However, they also want to export it in various other formats, standard and custom ones. Such examples are some proprietary XML formats, for example, but also JSON schema. Another use case is that companies, especially which work with many different API specifications, either ones that they create or ones that they connect to, it's often very hard to find the specification for the API or which APIs there are, what versions are in use, and so on. Usually this information is spread in all different places around the firms. Now in Orchestra server, you can centralize all this into a single source of truth for your API specifications. And the last example that I want to highlight is a more technical one. If you have a CI/CD pipeline as part of your development process, then you might want to have access to the latest version of your API specification, for example, to generate tests for it or to load it into your fix engine. With Orchestra server's REST API, you can do that automatically from your CI/CD pipeline scripts or code. Hopefully, you liked what you heard and saw about Orchestra and Orchestra server as well. If you would like to get started with the standard and the tool, then please contact either Nicoletta at Fixed Trading or myself, and we will help you get started with the system. Thank you very much for your attention.